Are you getting caught up in the latest health trends and feeling overwhelmed as to what diet is best? We get it, and that's why, as leaders of wellness in our community, Joanne's Place Health Foods has created the Wellness on Purpose podcast. On this podcast, you can expect community and brand experts to share impactful, educational, and realistic information to help you progress on your journey to live wellness on purpose now and for future generations. My name is Marissa Laughlin. I'm a holistic nutritionist in partnership with Joanne's Place and your host for this podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Wellness on Purpose podcast. We hope that everyone has adjusted back to the routine this month, whether you are going back to school or your kids are going back to school. Maybe your summer holidays have ended. Or maybe you're like me and just see September as this fresh start as we transition away from that fast and go with the flow type of summer into a nice slow and routine-based fall. Wherever you're at, I hope this transition is going well for you and you are finding your groove. Now, during this transition, many things change, and they definitely change for the better. It tends to be when we start to prioritize more of a daily routine, better sleeping habits, maybe we get back into a workout routine, and also we start to crave different types of foods during this season, like warmer soups, things that are more nourishing and supportive for the body through the colder temperatures. And also, it's a time in which we should be maybe checking in with ourselves and our stress levels to see how we are feeling mentally, physically, and emotionally. Now, stress, it's a very common topic here on the podcast, and it likely always will be because it is something that affects absolutely everybody. Whether you're a senior, a parent, student, or a child, stress is something that we've all faced at some point in our life. Now, as we progress through the school year, identifying and managing stress can be incredibly supportive for your immune system, your mental health, and your general overall wellness. So for today's episode, we've asked our favorite pharmacist to join us on the podcast again to chat more about how we can keep the entire family calm and less stressed this school year. Now, if you're wondering who this pharmacist is, and maybe you've missed a couple of our previous episodes, it is Cyrus. Cyrus is a compounding pharmacist who helps people get off drugs and onto a healthy and sustainable diet and lifestyle regime that includes key nutrients from one of Canada's top leading supplement lines, which he has created, Pure Lab Vitamins. Cyrus has joined us in the past to talk about many health concerns, but today we've asked him to chat about how stress and anxiety can affect the entire family. So let's get right into it. Hello, Cyrus. Welcome back to the Wellness on Purpose podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm very good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Thanks again for joining us. So today I wanted to discuss what has been deemed almost a global crisis, especially over the last few years, which is stress. And we've talked about stress pretty much in like every episode we've done here and even across all episodes on the podcast, because it's something that, everybody can relate to. Everybody is dealing with some form of stress, and especially going back to school this year. So that's what I wanted to talk with you about today. So let's jump right into it. I would love to know some information about how we can see stress show up in children. What are some signs that maybe parents should be looking out for that could indicate that their child is experiencing some state of stress?
Well, there's quite a few actually. So stress in children could be expressed by them being more moody and irritable, which is hard to distinguish, especially in teenage years, because for many it doesn't get any more moody or more irritable. But you as parents might know. Other signs are that kids are withdrawing from activities that they normally would enjoy, that they express worries more frequently and complain about school, maybe more crying without any bigger reason, which is a clear indication of kind of stress pressing down on them, that they show fearful reactions or become overly clingy. And also eating and sleeping patterns might change during acute times of stress in children.
Okay, so a lot of signs that parents could be looking out for. And maybe once they see some of those reoccurring changes in their children, they might start to wonder, like, where is this stress coming from for their children? So what kinds of things can cause stress for children?
I mean, that's obviously a very individual thing, but there's again like a more commonly found attributes or descriptions when kids are asked, or especially teens. I mean, the demands that school puts on them can be high, depending on their abilities. That can lead to frustrations. They might experience negative thoughts or feelings about themselves. Also, kids are going through a massive change in their bodies, girls and boys, and that can be a source of stress for them. Not feeling right, being exhausted, not getting enough sleep, and so forth. And then there's obviously problems with friends or peers at school. Bullying is coming up here, and it doesn't have to be a crazy, massive kind of bullying that happens, but the odd thing, poking and prodding in the already kind of insecure individual can cause a lot of stress. And then another factor is unsafe or unsure living environment in neighborhoods. If parents go through separation or divorce, this is a huge factor, especially in this very vulnerable age of teenagehood. And then obviously if there is any kind of chronic illness or other severe problems within the family. But I mean, this list could go on and on and on, as you can imagine. It's a very individualized setting that kids are living through.
Yeah. And like one thing can just kind of snowball into something bigger too. Like it could be a small hormonal change, and then all of a sudden something is, going on with their friend group, and then they get sick, and it could just be like one thing after another that's just really causing this, big outburst where it is maybe a big emotional release that parents see in their children as well, which is sometimes like they didn't see this coming, but it was just all these little things adding up over and over again. So, in time, with all of that stress kind of building up in children's life, what impact does that have over a longer period of time?
Well, we certainly see a higher incidence of mental disorders like depression or anxiety conditions. Also, a higher incidence of sleep problems, sleep disorders. All this can actually also, stress can lead to growth interruptions and also have an impact on sex hormones, sex hormone balances, like hormonal disorders like dysmenorrhea, where periods are not running regularly. Stress has a huge impact on our digestive system. I talk about this over and over and over in my presentations and webinars. During times of stress, we are in a so-called fight or flight mode, which was developed during our evolution to help our ancestors survive critical situations of danger. You can imagine in such acute stress situations, survival situations, digestion is really not important, and the body actually shuts the GI tract down. And if you're living today with this metabolic mechanism, fight or flight mode, under chronic stress conditions, you can imagine that your digestion day in, day out is not working as well as possible. So this stress can lead long-term into digestive disorders. And with that, then also nutrient deficiencies, which are already very common in teenagers, because kids usually have a somewhat limited diet. They stick to what they know. They have certain favorites, and oftentimes those favorite foods are not the most nutritious ones. So if then even those nutrients in those lesser nutritious meals and foods are not even properly digested and absorbed, then you're really causing long-term effects of nutrient deficiencies. Well, then this goes further. Like we see a lot of fatigue, low energy, and weight gain in teenagers. Obviously, you can imagine a depressed individual that is like holding back, being more indoors, that is less active, can experience such effects of long-term stress. And that then also leads straight into long-term effects in the young adult. And when dealing with digestive problems, nutrient deficiencies, low energy, low levels of exercise, then this long term in the young adult or mid-age adult can lead into increased risks of heart disease, strokes, quicker aging, and even also personality changes long term. Any chronic disease is kind of triggered by stress.
Yes, and I do think that, even as children moving through to teenagers, so your 20s and 30s, like if you're stressed as a child through your teenage years and then carrying that through your 20s, like you could be living in that fight or flight mode for pretty much your whole life. And the problem with that is you're going to see the increased risks of those heart attacks, strokes, things like that, that are, very life changing. It could be at a younger age as well, too, that people experience that. So it's something to pay attention to for the health of your children in the future, too.
Well, stress needs to be paid attention to. It's nothing we want to kind of just live with and think that this is our normal. I believe everybody has a choice to kind of recognize stressors and potentially remove them, or try to find ways to alter the way you're dealing with stressors long term. And
Yes.
this way, lead a less stressed life. I always say a job that stresses you out day after day is truly not worth keeping, even if it's a well-paying job. But what's it worth if you're steering straight into chronic disease because of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Now, with a lot of these, signs and what parents could be looking for in their children, like sometimes it's not as obvious that they're dealing with some stress, but when parents are able to pinpoint some of these symptoms, or maybe their teenagers coming with them saying, I am feeling some level of stress, what would you suggest to parents in terms of what the best first step would be to supporting their children?
Well, and I actually am going through this right now with my two teenage kids. I think the best way is to support. I think we got to help our kids to identify the stressors. So we got to talk about what specifically causes you stress, and then potentially find ways to help them avoid those stressors and or deal with them differently, change the attitude towards those stressors. Another very important thing from my point of view is exercise, and that really needs to happen daily. If stress happens daily, then exercise needs to happen daily. Breathing exercises. I mean, exercise enhances breathing, and with that, air ventilation and carbon dioxide exhalation. But even during the school day or day at jobs or work, we can very easily incorporate breathing exercises which help cope with stress as well. And then with teenagers today, we got to talk about phone addictions, the excessive use of electronic devices. And that also then goes hand in hand with peer pressure. If you have a strong group of friends and they all kind of communicate 24/7 on their devices, and that puts a lot of pressure on a kid as well to be present and not miss anything. Or there is this term that we actually developed or formed within our parent peer group, AMS syndrome, afraid to miss something. This is truly a thing that weighs heavily on young kids these days, and electronic devices are the trigger here. I think then together as a family team, you can then also start working on improving diet and sleep rhythm. I think it's hugely important in the chronically stressed individual to actually prepare for food intake and actually calm down. Take 5-10 minutes before meal time to actually wind down. Perfect time for a breathing meditation at that point, because it kind of stops the fight and flight mode setting that you are currently in, and hopefully allows you to get into the opposite, which is what we call the parasympathetic innervation or parasympathetic state, which is then actually sending blood and oxygen and attention into the gastrointestinal tract in anticipation of mealtime, and then digestive activity actually increases. So with that, you're then processing food better, you're absorbing nutrients better, and you're slowly kind of replenishing your system to deal with stress better. One last thing that could be discussed in that point is also in this whole transition of diet, sleep, stress management. There are obviously very, very, from my point of view, effective supplements that can be added in to accelerate this process of rebalancing and improving your ability to cope with stress.
Those are all great first steps too. And when I was looking up kind of this topic, because I don't have any children of my own, so this isn't necessarily an area of expertise for me, but I was just wondering, I was reading blogs and seeing where parents were looking for more information. And an interesting thing that I came across was in regards to children in a house that is stressful. And I think this is maybe not talked about enough, because obviously as parents, your intention is to not, show the stress in front of children. At least that's what I would guess, is you want to try to keep everything, relatively routine at home and feeling good. But is there a correlation between being in a house that's constantly managing stress, like your parents are very stressed, they're showing their stress, your house is chaotic? Is there any type of relation of that stress going to their children?
Absolutely. I mean, no doubt about that. And even parents that think they can hide their stress levels from their kids, they are, I think they have to recheck. Kids sense everything and they know everything, even if they can't put an exact description on what they experience, and they experience the stress levels we as parents go through 100%. And you're absolutely right. If one of the family members is showing like more pronounced troubles and issues and problems due to stress, then maybe the whole family and the whole household needs to be treated, or start a change with exercise, dietary changes, more talking about the stressors, more support within the whole family, and then potentially also some targeted supplementation. The goal is to be happy and to be relaxed and enjoy life, rather than kind of going through life stressed out 24/7 and around 365 days a year. It can all be planned out. There can be planning for like downtime, for active time, fun time, but it needs to be looked at. And I agree with you that most certainly the whole family, the whole household should be made aware of such changes, and then potentially the whole situation improves.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when children see parents also trying to make those changes, like daily exercise, improved eating habits, especially as teenagers, that can translate and hopefully inspire them to follow that path as well, and keep that conversation going with their parents as well about stress.
Absolutely.
So, in regards to university and college student, and I can speak more from my own personal experience in this area of being under stress. You're studying, you're maybe working part-time, you're trying to meet deadlines. This is a time when typically people would turn to stimulants. Maybe that's caffeine, maybe that's alcohol or other things. And there would be times in which, when I was in college, those were things I would turn to, and occasionally maybe exercise, stress relief, but it wasn't something that I was, I would say, as aware of my first time around college. So for our university and college students, what suggestions or advice can you give to them to help manage their stress levels this year?
Well, there are obviously different types of people, and they study differently. Some are procrastinators, others are like bang on and always in time. That needs to be considered for sure. When I went through my university time and studying pharmacy, it was certainly stressful. Kind of fairly early, I realized for myself that when it comes to studying, for me, it was all about quality time, not quantity. I believe that our brains have a specific intake capacity. And once you reach that limit, using stimulants of any kind is not really improving your learning efficacy anymore. So I knew that after 6-7 hours, my day was done. And I completely stopped thinking about studying, enjoyed exercise or other activities, went outside, and then kind of tried to find a good night's sleep and start a fresh day the next day and do my, again, 6 to 7 hours during those massive exam times we had to go through. Stimulants, I think, are really a crutch that will backfire for most of us. Yeah, enjoying life and opening your mind and staying relaxed, I think, has more impact on studying efficacy than synthetic drugs, caffeine, and just sitting there for hours and hours and hours, and your brain is really not taking anything in anyway anymore. So take a break, start breathing, exercising, enjoy the day, the evening, and then with the knowledge that tomorrow is another day where you're going to study hard and we'll get it done.
That's great advice for sure. Okay, last question for you, Cyrus. So Pure Labs is running a free webinar coming up, and you're going to be talking about stress and anxiety for back to school. So can you tell our listeners a little bit more about that and how they can register?
Yeah, this webinar is running on September 28th at 6:30 p.m. The easiest way to register is from Joanne's Place newsletter or Joanne's Place website, or from our website directly at purelabvitamins.com. Anybody registered receive an email with the webinar link, and you just have to click on that link at the time and date. And also, once registered, you'll also receive a link to the recording about 2 days after the webinar, so you could review it again or send the link to friends and family. Personally, I really like the Q&A section at the end, where I answer the questions that come in live. That really is, I always find this fascinating, what people come up with and how it can potentially provide solutions. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. So again, this is September 28th, 6:30 p.m. Anybody registered with Pure Lab Vitamins will get an invitation anyway. Otherwise, check Joanne's website or newsletter for the registration link.
Awesome. Perfect. So if the listeners here have any questions further about stress and anxiety through the school year and with your family, then definitely be sure to sign up. And if you can't make it live, even just to get the information through the recording as well. So we'll leave that link on our featured post on the Joanne's Place website. And again, you can go to Pure Labs and register, or also through our newsletter. So thank you so much, Cyrus, for joining us today. It's always a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you very much.
If you guys are still here, thank you so much for checking out today's episode. You know what to do now. Be sure to subscribe to our channels so you're notified as soon as a new episode is released. And also find us on social media and share that you are listening to the Wellness on Purpose podcast.